The year is 53 BC. In a windswept Mesopotamian desert, a Roman general kneels in the dust, surrounded by enemy cavalry. He is the wealthiest man in the history of Rome. He marched 40,000 legionaries into this wasteland chasing glory. And within the hour, his captors will pry open his jaw and pour molten gold straight down his throat. His name is Marcus Licinius Crassus. And this is the story of how 10,000 horse archers destroyed the most disciplined army the ancient world had ever seen. This is the Battle of Carrhae. To understand Carrhae, you must first understand Crassus. By 60 BC, Marcus Licinius Crassus was not just rich. He was Rome itself. He owned the fire brigades that fought blazes in the city, and he was famous for refusing to extinguish the flames until the panicked owner agreed to sell him the burning property for a fraction of its worth. He owned silver mines, vast estates, and thousands of slaves. A generation earlier, he had crushed the slave revolt of Spartacus, lining the Appian Way with 6,000 crucified rebels. He was one-third of the First Triumvirate, sharing power with Julius Caesar and Pompey the Great. But for Crassus, money was not enough. Caesar was carving up Gaul, drenched in glory. Pompey had conquered the East. Crassus had no great military triumph to his name. And so, at the age of 60, with almost no real experience commanding a campaign of this scale, he set his eyes on the one empire Rome had never broken: the Parthian Empire. A wealthy, sophisticated power stretching from the Euphrates to the edge of modern Afghanistan. Crassus believed conquering Parthia would make him richer than the gods, and finally, equal to Caesar. He could not have been more wrong. The Parthians were not the soft, decadent Easterners of Roman propaganda. They were a warrior aristocracy descended from the Iranian Parni tribe, heirs to the shattered lands of Alexander's empire. They had forged a military doctrine unlike anything Rome had ever faced. At the heart of the Parthian army stood two terrifying forces. First, the cataphracts. Armored heavy cavalry, both man and horse plated in scale and chain, wielding two-handed lances called contos, long enough to spear through a Roman shield and the soldier behind it. Second, the horse archers. Light, fast, lethally accurate, and trained from childhood in a single devastating trick that would soon become legendary across the ancient world. They could fire an arrow with deadly precision while riding away at full gallop, twisting backwards in the saddle. The Parthian shot. A weapon that would change history, and one we still name today. In the spring of 53 BC, Crassus crossed the Euphrates with 7 legions, 4,000 cavalry, and 4,000 light infantry. Roughly 40,000 men. His Armenian ally, King Artavasdes, begged him to take the mountain route through Armenia, where Parthian cavalry would be useless among the high passes. Crassus refused. A local Arab chieftain named Ariamnes appeared in the Roman camp and offered to guide the legions on a faster path, straight across the desert. Crassus accepted. Ariamnes was a Parthian agent. For days, the legions marched deeper into a flat, baking wasteland. Away from rivers. Away from cover. Away from any terrain that could blunt cavalry. Ariamnes whispered that the Parthian king was fleeing, that the campaign would be a walkover, that glory was a few more miles away. And then, on the morning of June 9th, near a small town called Carrhae, Ariamnes vanished. Roman scouts came riding back, white-faced. They had been ambushed. The horizon was filling with dust. And then came the drums. Strange, deep, hollow drums the Romans had never heard before. Drums designed to crawl into a man's chest and rot his nerve. The Parthian commander Serena had arrived with 10,000 cavalry. Crassus had 4 times the men, and he was about to lose every single one of them. Crassus formed a hollow square, a defensive formation of legionaries with shields locked outward, his cavalry and light troops in the center. It was a sound choice against infantry. Against horse archers, it was a coffin. The Parthians did not charge. They circled. They rode in great looping orbits around the Roman square, firing arrow after arrow after arrow into the densely packed legionaries. The Romans raised their shields and waited. They had fought horse archers before. They knew that eventually, horse archers ran out of arrows. And then a Roman officer noticed something terrible on the horizon. A long line of camels. Serena had brought a baggage train of camels carrying thousands of spare arrows. The Parthians would not run out. Not today. Not for hours. The arrows fell like rain. Iron-tipped, fired from powerful composite bows that could punch through a Roman shield at 50 paces. The shields held against direct shots, but the Parthians fired at angles, raining shafts into feet, hands, eyes, the narrow gaps between locked scuta. Men screamed. Lines began to buckle. And from somewhere in the dust, Crassus's son Publius, a brave young officer who had served under Caesar himself in Gaul, begged his father to let him countercharge with the cavalry. Anything, he said, was better than standing still and being shot to pieces. Crassus agreed. It was a death sentence. Publius led roughly 1,300 cavalry, 500 archers, and 8 cohorts of legionaries away from the square in a desperate charge. The Parthian horse archers turned and fled, exactly as they had planned. Publius pursued, hungry for blood, hungry to save the day. And the moment he was out of sight of his father, the trap snapped shut. The fleeing archers wheeled around. The cataphracts crashed in from the flanks. Publius and his men were surrounded on open ground with nowhere to run. They formed a small ring on a low hill and were systematically destroyed. Realizing the situation was hopeless, Publius ordered his own shield-bearer to kill him rather than be taken alive. His head was cut from his body, raised on the tip of a Parthian spear, and paraded slowly in front of the main Roman line. Crassus, watching from the hollow square, saw his son's severed head riding toward him on enemy steel. He never recovered. The arrows continued through the afternoon. By dusk, the Romans had suffered staggering casualties and had no answer to the storm. Under cover of darkness, Crassus tried to retreat. The wounded were abandoned in the desert. Thousands of legionaries left behind, weeping, begging their comrades not to leave them to the Parthians. The march back toward Carrhae became a chaos of broken units and lost officers stumbling through the night. The next morning, Serena rode forward and offered a parley. He proposed that Crassus meet him personally to negotiate terms of surrender. Crassus's officers begged him not to go. They knew it was a trick. But his army was openly mutinous now, demanding he accept any chance of survival. Reluctantly, the old general rode out to meet his enemy. A scuffle broke out, perhaps deliberately staged. Crassus was killed in the dust, and according to Roman accounts, Serena ordered molten gold poured down the throat of the dead general, a final, ironic mockery of a lifetime of greed. When the dust finally settled, 20,000 Roman soldiers were dead. 10,000 had been taken prisoner and marched east, to spend the rest of their lives as slaves on the Parthian frontier. Only 10,000 survivors limped back across the Euphrates. 7 legionary eagles were lost. Sacred standards that Rome would not recover for 30 long years until the Emperor Augustus negotiated their return through diplomacy rather than conquest. The Parthian Empire would remain Rome's eternal eastern rival for 300 years to come. The First Triumvirate, broken by the death of Crassus, would collapse into civil war between Caesar and Pompey, leading directly to the fall of the Roman Republic itself. And the Parthian shot, the technique of firing backwards at full gallop, would echo through history into our own language. We still use the phrase today. A parting shot. A final blow delivered while retreating. A lesson learned in Roman blood, in the sands of Mesopotamia, on a summer day in 53 BC. If you enjoyed this story, the Battle of Carrhae is the perfect prelude to our videos on Cannae and Alesia. Subscribe to Historical Club for more of Rome's greatest victories and her most catastrophic defeats. Because history is not written only by the winners. It is also written in the dust of the losers.